Hello, hello. I'm a minute early. What are we going to do for a whole minute whilst we wait for 2 o'clock to come around? I could complain about my keyboard. I've got thumbnails up here this time, and it's because the down arrow on my keyboard is broken. I use it all the time, turns out. So now I can't just simply go up and down my slides. I've had to bring up the thumbnails so that I can click on them. Oh, hardships. Okay, it's 2 o'clock. Hooray! It's Thursday afternoon. It's the live stream. My keyboard is a little bit broken, but that won't stop us, will it? Also, I might have to show you this key I just found on the floor. Came in the room. There's just a key lying in the middle of the room. Look what it looks like. It's like, what sort of key is that? What does it open? It's profoundly insecure. So that's an adventure for later. Should do a different sort of live stream for that, shouldn't I? Emma and the key. What does this unlock? We had a week off the live stream last week because we did a full day's virtual training, which was fabulous. It was so nice to be. Well, it was it was very adrenaline filled, because being, live to an audience of about 20, all of whom were using consonants at the same time under instruction. There's peril at every corner. Who knows what could have gone wrong? But we had a wonderful day creating the most gorgeous marketing materials. And it was one of those moments where everything comes together, and all the hard work that you do putting your data in, and all of the hard work that we do writing features so that your data is carefully looked after and made to look as good as it can. It all came together and it was a wonderful day for us. So for everyone who came, thank you so much. It was brilliant, and we'll do it again. If you couldn't make it and you're thinking, I really want to know about producing PDFs, 2 bits of good news. The first bit of good news is that everything is documented, including some kind of standalone videos. Not a video of the actual day, but some videos that I recorded separately, really for my practice. But they're very on point and useful. So you can sit and you can do the course, the day yourself, so long as you've got a Constance account. And everything that you need is right there. But it may be a slightly lonely experience because I won't be there. And the second piece of good news is that if you would like that course to be run again live, with me actually there, well, virtually actually there, then be delighted to do so. So drop us a line to the usual address, support@constance.app, and we'll schedule on demand, as they say, more courses. The other thing, it's given us a real appetite to do some more of these things. I mean, they are exhausting, but they're also extremely useful, I think, to be able to spend a concentrated day becoming very adept at a particular part of data management. So next up, I think what we will do is possibly a training day on reporting, and another possible training day on project management. So if either of those thrill you, the prospect thereof, then that will be good. Let us know any particular twangles, oddities, questions, content that you would like us to cover in that. Great. And on that note, sort of for today, I thought what we would do is have a look at some project management things, because at the end of the course, folk were saying, when we said, like, what should we do next? It was like, oh yeah, to-dos, project management, definitely. So let's have a bit of a look at some of that today. We're going to cover it through our forced structured agenda, but really we're just going to be creating some to-dos and having a look at some thoughts around that. So task of the week is going to be adding a to-do, Reporting Spotlight is going to be reporting on to-dos. From our own correspondence is, I have to admit, I made this one up from ages and ages ago. Someone must have asked at some point, but how can I update all of my to-dos in bulk? So we'll have a look at that. What's new? I'm sure I have covered this on the live stream previously, but I couldn't, in my scamper through, couldn't actually see any reference to it. So we will briefly cover a fairly new and very small addition to the to-do editing area, which is that you can set a to-do either before or after a date. It's tiny, but it is new, so I'll cover it in case you haven't seen it. And then a power move will be, I'm reading this thumbnail, basing a to-do on contract dates. And that's, I think that might be the most interesting feature of the entire system. Not really. Just the idea that if you have a late manuscript, everything goes wrong from there on in. It's like, it's such a curse. It's such a terrible thing to happen, because if the manuscript's late, then all of editorial schedules have to change, and they get squished up, and of course it's production who get the squishy end of the squished up schedule, and then their paper buying and their rota management is all messed up, and then you might be late to market, and then sales have tried to sell this into a particular, it's just all knock-on effect is awful. So anything we can do to avoid a manuscript being late. And you'll say, but how can I control that? That's not within my powers. That's up to the contributors. Well, we shall have a look, shan't we, at what I think we can do to make that as remote a possibility as possible. Great. So let us go to the internet. Well, it's not really the internet. It's my computer. Let us go to the version of Consonance that is on my computer. And we're going to look, I've forgotten already, we're going to look at Task of the Week, which is adding a to-do. So I'm just going to cover this in a sort of standalone, here is how you create a to-do kind of a vibe. But none of this makes any sense as a sort of a standalone thing. I mean, who cares adding one to-do? That's not the problem. The problem is, oh my God, I've got 150 books coming out in the next year. Each of them have 800 things they need doing with different people. How do I manage that? So I promise we will get to that bit. But let's start small and localized by looking at creating one single to-do on a work. So I'm on my homepage. I click on the menu, as I always do, and I go to Project Management. I expect by now you know that I'm always going to blather on at this point saying there are a number of ways you can get two to-dos. You can type the word to-do here, and then it whittles it down. You can press the control button to toggle the shortcut keys, and then you can press J and T. I know you know all of that. I just feel like if there's anybody sort of tuning in for the first time who doesn't know that there are ways to save your wrists on your daily meanderings through the system, then those are available. Oh, and you can also star it, and then you don't have to go anywhere, just go over here. So that's great. We're on our way to the to-dos area. And this is a kind of out of context list again, isn't it? It's just, here are some to-dos, here are a whole load of to-dos. So whilst you might think that we're going to come here to create a new to-do, we're not. We're going to go to a work. I'm going to go to Cats of Wales, which is an imaginary work. And I'm going to go to the project management area on Cats of Wales. So project management covers a variety of different features. You can see we've got roles and issues and briefings and discussions. And navigating your way through Consonance is really, we're not forcing you to march down one particular route with this stuff. Every team is honestly different, and every team has got multiple decades of experience in how to get products to market. And, we're not going to trample over your learned experience. So these are sort of building blocks, like choose your own workflow approach. And to-dos are one of those. To-dos are the sort of primitive, atomised unit of thing that needs to be done. And you see that sort of thing in pretty much every project management system, don't you? If you're on a kind of Kanban approach, then there's a card, and a card has some words in it, and they might be classed as a to-do or a task. If you're looking at a Gantt chart, you've got usually things down the left-hand side, and they are the things that need to be done. So it's that sort of task-based modelling that we're looking at this point. So we're going to go to to-dos for Cats of Wales, and we are going to be met with the to-dos that exist there currently. And you'll see on this page we've got a number of different things going on. We've got an indication of the due date. We've got an indication of who is on the hook for it. We've got an indication of whether the to-do has in fact been done yet or not. And we've got some flags to say, well, gosh, this to-do is overdue. This to-do is blocking another one. This is a milestone. We'll have a look at what that means. And so on and so forth. So it's this sort of list that we're going to be grappling with today. So as I say, let's start in a very sort of minimal way, and let's add a to-do. I'm going to be adding a single to-do. I hope it goes without saying that there are ways to do this in bulk. So if we wanted to copy a huge number of to-dos from our template or from an exemplar, then we can absolutely do that. But let's go to add a to-do, and that brings up this form. You will see this form in a couple of other places throughout the system. What you need to be able to do is to be able to edit these to-dos from wherever you happen to be in the system where you need to see the detail. So this will pop up on this page and on some other pages on demand. Let's start at the top. What needs to get done? So in here, a bad thing to do is to say something like, well, you know what? Let's have a look at our documentation and see what our documentation says about what a good or a bad thing to do is. On any page within Consonants, you can search the documentation. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say set up to-dos. I've lost my thing. It's my stupid silly down arrow. Set up to-dos. And in here we've got a document article called Set Up To-Dos. So let's go in here. And this is a useful article that we've written up, which gives a sort of discursive description on things you might want to consider when naming to-dos. Now again, you will know better than me about how you want to run things within your own particular setup. But these are some thoughts based on, working across a large number of different companies over time and seeing what has worked for them and what has worked less well for them. So it might be worth a scamper through this little story of how do we get started. And within here it says, start with a work that you're publishing soon because you're so familiar with it. You'll be interested in the process because this is a piece of work that needs to get done, and there's deadlines fast approaching, and there's excitement from the editorial side on being lucky enough to publish this particular book and all of that stuff. So it is a good idea when you're doing something like this to make it as real as possible. Don't start by trying to import your 5-year backlog of products that are already out there in the world. It's just boring, and it doesn't sit into your brain quite as easily. Do that bit afterwards once you've got these big shapes sorted out. So start with the relevant work to your brain. Dump down all of the to-dos you can think of. Don't worry, treat it like as a checklist to start with. Don't start thinking about who's doing it, when they're doing it, what order of events need to occur for it to make sense. Just get it all down, and then use that as a starting point for talking with colleagues to say, have we missed anything? Now, it's perfectly valid to do this first approach in Excel. Do it in whichever sort of medium means that the computer disappears and all you're thinking about is process. So, if it's pen and paper, if it's Excel, if it's a Word document, just get down that brain dump of, I'm going to write down all of the things I need to do to get a product of this type, this specific product, from soup to nuts. And you might fruitfully think of one very particular sort of work to get started. For instance, a series work. And even better, the sort of work where the cover is basically the same each time. There's the same series editor. The cover, the way that the project is brought to market is kind of the same. One where you've already started to notice some patterns, because it's those patterns that you're going to be trying to capture in some of these to-dos. There's no requirement in Constance for every single work to have the same to-dos. I mean, that would be very odd, because even the most formulaic series paperback is going to have some individual work-specific oddities. You might want, in one particular one, you might want to put an advert in the front. And so there's that whole getting the advert to be included loop of the workflow. In another one, it might be a rush job, in which case all of the nice to haves go out the window and you're very tersely getting the thing out to the printer as soon as possible. So there's lots of variations on a theme. But like I said, at the moment, what you're trying to do is allow your brain to tell you all of the things that need to get done on an example work. And then you can iterate and change and flex and adapt for various other things as we go. This is a good one, and this is much more about psychologicals than actually programming or working in a publisher, isn't it? We say that don't skimp on the number of to-dos, and it's funny what goes through one's mind when you're actually faced with reality. It is actually true. It is actually a true fact that there might be validly 800 things that you need to do to get a particular product to market. And actually, that's incredibly upsetting. It's like, well, if there's 800 things to do, this is impossible. How am I going to do it? All I would say is that writing down the 800 things is going to be a better step than not writing down the 800 things. If those 800 things need doing anyway, I mean, this is reality. This is facing reality. And once you've articulated the size of the problem, then you can do something about it. But if you remain in denial, thinking, oh, there's only about 14 things, it'll be fine. In fact, we'll commission 3 more of these. Seeing the truth in this day and age is a rare and yet valuable commodity. So don't skimp on the number of to-dos. Write everything down. Don't try and size them just at the moment. It's fine to have some huge ones, and it's fine to have some itty-bitty ones, because you can always add things later and you can always remove things as well. But you're in big picture capturing mode at the moment. Then once you've got this sort of chunky list, now you can start to think about when the things need to be done. We are edging towards actually getting some work done now and putting a to-do into our thing. So we'll look at saying when things need to be done. It might be that you need a particular to-do done on a very particular date. If the to-do is something like attend launch party, then it doesn't matter if your schedule has slipped or if the publication date changes, in which case you're now 10 days before publication instead of 8 days before. If you're going to a launch party, that is on a particular day of the week. It's on Wednesday the 12th of something, and so that is a fixed date, and you can say the launch party is on the 12th of May. Other to-dos are different, they're relative. they are always relative to the publication date, for instance. So 3 days after whenever the publication date ends up being, check Amazon to see that all is in order. 3 weeks before whenever the pub date actually ends up being, make sure that stock is in the warehouse, that sort of thing. So we'll look at relative and fixed dates, and we'll also look at no dates at all, because it is absolutely fine, if it works for you, to not have any dates on any of the tasks, have it as one enormous checklist, with like boxes, and you tick them off, and when you tick them off, they're done, and you're not worrying yourself with whether they're on time or not. For some projects that is completely valid. Like I say, this is a suite of tools available to you rather than dictating how you have to run your business. So more stuff about dates. There's stuff about assigning a person, which we'll look at. We'll look at fixed dates as well. And then the last bit I wanted to show you was what makes a good to-do name. So this is the form field that we're at the moment, isn't it? So let's try to put an action, put a verb in our name. So good ones, we say here, are things like send print files, and update library prices, and cancel such and such, because then you know when they're done, because an action has been performed. It's much more woolly to say prices to production, because it's like, yes, prices will to production. But what does that mean? How do we know when it's done? It's all a little bit vague. So if you're going to call something anything, put a verb in, so that then once you have confirmed receipt of payment, you know that you can check that box and get your rush of endorphins as the screen goes a little bit green. So that's great. Precision is great. So rather than saying update marketing metadata, you say update keywords, update final table of contents, etc. So precision, actionability, we'll look at making it reusable once we've got clear what the vague approach is, and so on. So these sorts of helpful tomes are available within Consonance. You can also go to them on the public-facing website. This is www.consonance.app. This is exactly the same stuff written in our help area, resources, user documents. So if you're in the market of sending this to a colleague or somebody who may not yet be using Consonance, same information is freely available. So great. So now we know that when we add a to-do and we give it its name, we need to be precise and we need to give the name something that is actionable. So I'm not going to say print. I'm going to say send to printer. And I'm going to be responsible. So I've typed my name there and it comes up. That's great. There is another way that you can assign responsibility. And at an early stage, you may well want to leave this entirely blank. That is fine. But if you have set up roles within the system, you can assign this to do not to an individual person, not even to an individual company, but to this sense of a role. So a role doesn't have to have an assignee attached to it yet. You can layer up the data that's available. We don't want you to feel like you can't add anything to Consonance because you just don't know yet. We don't know loads of stuff often until it's too late, but you don't want to be blocked by your system for having to hold everything in your head until it's perfect and then you put it all in. So if we looked for editor, for instance, then the drop down that appears, there are a few. There's Edith, whoever Edith is, but there's also the role of allocating editor and the role of commissioning editor and the role of managing editor and so on. I think there's some for production as well in this particular one. Yeah, so production controller, production director. And so, if you're doing your planning which of course we all are, 24 months out or 36 months out or whatever. And actually, you know, you might think, well, there's a recruitment drive happening in 12 months' time. Could be anyone. You can still put the role down, and then you're starting to build up this picture. So that's quite handy. And you can mix and match. You know, I mean, the production director is going to be involved. The managing editor might have some passing curiosity, and I, as an individual person, may also be responsible as well. I would just, you know, caution to say that if there's more than one level of responsibility for a particular to-do, you just have to be super clear that the actual people involved know which of them is responsible for actually doing the thing. Otherwise, it's that, you know, I thought it was you. So, you know, use this carefully as appropriate. So we've put in an actionable name. We know that when this has been sent to the printer by, let's say, Emma Barnes, that this can be ticked off. So good to do so far. Now we're going to look at these dates. And at the moment, there's no due date written down, which is, as I say, completely fine. If we have no due date, all we've got is a checkbox. This is either done or not done. There's no sense of urgency. There's no sense of pattern or order compared to other to-dos on this work. Completely valid. And again, especially if it's, you know, 36 months out, all good. But oftentimes there will be the same pattern of to-dos over multiple works. And there's real world notions like, I cannot send something to print if I haven't received the manuscript from the author. I mean, it sounds very obvious, of course, but there's hundreds and hundreds of to-dos like that you need to have done something before you can do this thing. And it can be a cascade. You can go all the way back. And it's hard to know what exactly, you know, if something is a bit late now, how do you know what that's blocking? Oh my goodness, we can't go to print because we should have done 6 things 12 weeks ago. So being able to put to-dos relative to particular dates can be really useful for revealing that set of dependencies. And then we've got some specific ways to say what needs to be done before this to-do can be worked on, you know, to specifically say this, that and the other. But dates are an important part of that. So I'm going to skip fixed due date for the moment. I'm going to click on relative due date, because I would say that that's probably the most useful. And it's the most handy for when you've set up your, let's call it a to-do template, and then you want to bang that out and attach it to multiple different works. I mean, that's just so fruitful to say, whatever if this is a relative date on this send to printer to do, the publication, if the publication date was 2025 and the date was, not 90 months, that would be very organised, wouldn't it? 90 days before the earliest pub date, then that's going to be February 2023. But then you can copy this to do, apply it to a work in 2027, and that work's publication date is then going to set up that work's to do. So, we're not putting in actual real dates. We're not saying the 9th of February 2023. We're saying whatever the date happens to be that is 90 days before the earliest pub date. So can you see that would allow you to change the pub date on one particular work, and all of your to-dos would reflow without you having to do it yourself. And it also means that you can set up templates or exemplar works that you duplicate the to-dos for. And then all of your the relativity of those to-dos gets carried forward depending on what the changing dates are. Because dates are going to change, aren't they? I don't think I've ever published a product where for some reason the pub date hasn't changed at some point. Maybe that's not true. It happens more than it should, anyway. And being able to actually manage upwards and being able to say, oh, I hear that we're pulling everything forward by 2 months. Here, press this single button, is the effect of that. Otherwise, the morning that it will take you to replan everything, the moment is kind of lost, and the senior director's gone off for their long weekend and you're left to pick up the pieces. So rapidity in terms of feeding back to the business, the effects of any decisions that might be being made, that can be quite powerful in and of itself. So relative due date. So the earliest pub date here is the 10th of May. Let's make it easy and make it one day before. So one day before the 10th of May is the 9th of May. That's the principle of it. And then the rest is arithmetic, isn't it? So if I were to say 90 days before the 10th of May, apparently that's the 9th of February. You see, even now Constance is doing complicated calendar work for us so that we don't have to. You can kind of mix and match the months and the days. So I can say, 90 days is more than 1 month, but that's fine. I can say 2 months and 90 days. It's like 80 years and 10. So I can mix and match my numbers. It'll all work out just fine. And I can actually put negative values in here. So you could say due 3 months and minus 2 days, which is, if that's how your mind works, then that is absolutely supported within consonants. But that's the general shape of it. You say how many time units before or after the particular date is that you want to use, and then consonants will say, okay, well that resolves to this date. This is now the due date, okay? And that's why we preview it there, so that you can say, oh right, wow, well if that turns out that it's the 12th of Feb, then I've got some more work to do because I'm not going to be ready in time. So you can fiddle around with it. But that's the general shape of it. So bearing that in mind, let's get that madness out of the way there. Bearing that in mind, what I want to show you next is the contents of this drop down, because most of the time it makes such sense, doesn't it, to do something relative to the pub date. Pub date is a very important date. There are other very important dates within your consonants account. Every time you enter information, it doesn't come for free. It comes at a great personal cost. Filling in all of these web forms. You want to make the most of all of this information and all of the time that you're spending maintaining these beautiful records. Not to get too philosophical, but what is the point of consonants? There are a number of different reasons why you use it, right? There may be some particularly piquant reason, like you need to get an Onyx message out to people because suddenly EUDR is coming. The only way to communicate DDS and Tarot codes in Onyx to trading partners in Europe will be through Onyx 3. If you're not on Onyx 3, then this is a crunch moment appearing. So, there's all sorts of transactional reasons why using consonants like that is important. But there's also the sort of sense of clarity and calm that comes from having put your information into a safe place where it can remain being stored, but how much more useful if it can be meaningful as well. So yes, put a publication date in so that it can be communicated out to the retailers so that they know when to take the embargo off or when to announce it or whatever. But, use it as well, like we're doing here. Use the publication date to make sure that your workflow is smooth and seamless and as hiccup-free as possible. And the same goes for other dates in the system, such as the contract dates. So let's just have a scamper through this list and see the vague sorts of things. And this can change depending on your particular setup, but this gives you enough of a vibe to understand. So the one that we've got selected is the one right at the top of the list, and that is the earliest pub date. Now bear in mind we're at work level here. Works are not a thing made manifest on this plane of reality. Works are intellectual property. They are the notion of a book. The closest they come to taking physical form is the manuscript. Big ream of paper printed out. But we don't sell a work. A work doesn't have a publication date. A work doesn't have an ISBN, no matter what some of your other systems might tell you. The work is the parent of the things that we sell. And it's structured like that so that we can share information between these different products so that we don't have to type the same thing in again and again and again. So if you are publishing, say you're publishing, let me find a book. There must be a book here somewhere. So, this is a nice one. Who's this? Don Quixote in 2 different languages. Very nice. So this is a paperback product, and it's got an ISBN on the back. I've just remembered I'm tiny in the screen. Imagine that I'm holding up a book and it's got, like all books, it's got a barcode on the back and that's got an ISBN 13 on it. It's the paperback. There will also be a PDF, ideally open access. There will also be an EPUB. There might be a downloadable audiobook. They're all the same work, but they are the things that get sold so that we can make our authors and contributors money. So when we say earliest pub date, what we mean is there will be a number of different products on this work. They might all have the same pub date, but one of them might be earlier than the others, or there might be, one pub date for the audiobooks, another for the digital, and another for the paperback, and another one for the hardback, if people still do that. So you've got this list of options as to, do you want to choose the earliest pub date from any of those products? Do you want to choose the earliest print pub date? Do you want to choose the earliest ebook pub date, audiobook pub date, and so on and so forth? And then some more specific formats as we go down. So it'll absolutely depend on the nature of the to-do. I mean, since we've called our to-do here send to print, I don't think it would be too outlandish to say let's key this against the earliest print pub date. So have you noticed that when I selected that, the date disappeared from the end here? So when I selected earliest pub date, when I select earliest print pub date, no date. And that is because on this work that we happen to be on, there is no pub date against a print product. Now it could be that there isn't a print product, in which case why is somebody trying to put send to print on the to-do? It could be that there is a print product or multiple print products, the hardback and the paperback, but nobody has yet allocated the pub date to those products, and that's absolutely fine. The great thing about this planning process is that you can have lots of patchy data. You can have not set up anything yet, and you're still going to be able to do your planning. And then when the time comes that somebody puts the publication date in to the print edition, print product, then this is going to spring into life, and Constance is going to think, okay, well, now we know what the date is, so I'm going to be able to say one day before that is such and such date, and I'm going to be able to flag if that is now overdue or if that is now blocking or similar. So, again, it's a little bit like the roles earlier, isn't it? You don't need to necessarily know exactly which human member of your team is going to be responsible for sending this product to print, but you can say what the role of that person might be and then add it in as you go. Just to very briefly bang on about some of the other dates, because I have mentioned already that this idea of keying some of your to-dos against contract dates is such a great payoff, because again, you need to have carrots and sticks to be good at data management, don't you? You need to give yourself little presents that make it all worthwhile. And if you're having to, conform to the strictures of a system in order to get contract PDFs sent out to your authors rather than just writing it on a napkin in the pub and walking off, if you're going to do the job properly, then it's really good to keep the data alive and meaningful. it also, I mean, gosh, the number of contracts that you've seen, it really is amazing how you can tell when someone has written a contract and they might be a commissioning editor who never has to go near the royalty end of things. I mean, you can say anything in a Word doc, can't you? You can absolutely write phrases such as 7/8 of the prevailing rate shall be paid on products sold in the 5th month of the year, except for when the discount is over 75%, and then it shall be 2/5 of the prevailing rate. It's like, you wrote that because you like words, not because you want to be able to easily calculate your royalties at the end of the year or the end of the month. So the same sort of thing goes with dates. You know, if you're putting dates into a contract, and you know, and the signatory, the author, say on the contract, knows that this isn't just a story. This is a legally binding agreement. And when we say we want the manuscript by the 13th of December, we are going to hold you to that, and we have mechanisms in place to make sure that that happens. So by knowing that you're going to not just write this in a Word document, print it out, sign it, and then move on, by keeping this data alive, it somehow takes on a greater hue of relevance earlier in the process. I think it keeps everyone a bit sharper, and you can explain that to authors and agents. You can say, you know, are you absolutely committed to these dates? Because now is the time to say, you know, it's kind of fine to change dates at a really early stage, because no one's bought paper, no one's managed the rota for who's going to do the typesetting. You know, it's absolutely fine to be honest. So yes, and I certainly wouldn't suggest that you let computers beep and boop at each other about this stuff. You know, that when I say have a to-do that's keyed against a contract date, this is how I envisage it. Check number 1 on manuscript progress. So I would enter a to-do such as that, and I would say, I mean, depending on the work, or depending on the author, or depending on everything, you know, this number is going to be very different here. But I could say, you know, 2 years before the manuscript delivery date, check in on progress. And this is not, you know, pressing this button now is not going to send some automated email saying you are contractually obliged to blah, blah, blah. No, it's going to pop a thing up on my dashboard as this Monday the 13th of December 2021 approaches, and then I write a human message with kindness and compassion and curiosity to say, hey, you know, we signed the contract 3 weeks ago. Very exciting, isn't it? Delighted to say that plans are coming along. Your manuscript delivery date is in 2 years, but it seems like a short time, but it's not. So how's it going? You know, let's use computers to allow us to be human without having to store lots of information in our heads the whole time. That's what I envisage there. So I would do a to-do like that, 24 months. Depending on how worried I am about it, that might actually be 8 months, or, you know, whatever the timescales are, however you work. But I would do multiple, you know, so I would do check number 1, and then I'd do check number 2 as a separate to do, and it would be, you know, later, so like 6 months beforehand, 5 months beforehand, 4 months, 3.2 months beforehand. Still no manuscript. Any news? That sort of thing. But this is like a canary in the mine. The sooner you get a sniff, a sense in your gut that this might be going a bit wrong, the better, because you can replan, and it's less bad to replan if we've still got a lot of time in the budget. So use that as appropriate. The other thing I'd say is that this is the sort of most blunt manuscript delivery date. There are various other options that you can choose within this drop down that will allow you to, really refine. So you could absolutely say, the illustrations are due on such and such a date, and you could say, check with the illustrator on progress. Or you might want to say 10% of the illustrations are going to be due, and then 50% the month after. So, you can structure that again. So it can be quite handy. That's that's an external player management thing there. Another one is managing that squish moment between editorial and production. Now, everyone has it. Even if you're a one-person team, there is a squish when you get to the end of the editorial process and the beginning of the production process. And it's just such a pivotal moment, isn't it? And if you are in a much larger team than 1 or 4 or 20, then this can be a source of organisational friction. And so it's really nice to be able to manage carefully expectations and changes around that important moment. So there are a few different dates that remain meaningful in the rest of the system that can be used in the to-do area. One of them is the production handover date. This is editorial, signing off their bit. This is line edited. It's not proofread yet because it's not typeset. But this is the appropriate level of polish for this manuscript. Here you go, production, over to you, and then production can start their important work. So that's a great one to know about and manage. There's also press dates in the system. So this is the date where we are planning to send the finished cover and interior PDF and any embellishment files as well, spot UV and so forth, and embossing foil stamp templates to the printer. And so this can be communicated with the printer well in advance of time, stored here, and then keyed against in terms of to-dos. And again, it's funny, isn't it? Here we are down at the almost microscopic level of we're looking at one to-do for one work against one date. But as you can imagine, this starts to become very, very relevant when you are publishing upwards of 150 works a month. And there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of things changing. So try and think, gosh, yes, if we could smoothen our process of handing over from editorial to production on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, this could be very powerful. So those are some of the relative due dates. I'm going to have a look at some of the other things. Look at how much time it takes to talk through this. It speaks really to the fact that this is quite a like I said, primitive building block, but it has import throughout the rest of the system. So it's all right that we've gone in depth on this today. You can say when a to-do has been done. This is useful for retrospectives. It is if a project goes spectacularly well, it's really great to pick the bones out of it and think, let's do that again. Let's do that every time. What did we do right? We hit our targets. Okay, so the due date was missed by 7 days, but that was okay. It still worked out. So there's great utility in understanding whether your predictions of when something needs to be done and the knock-on effect of that are up to scratch. And of course, there's the other way as well, where if you have an absolutely horrendous project, everything goes wrong, you can put it down to the gods, but you can also, pick through it and think, well, what do we actually need to give 30 more days to this part of the process? Is that the reality of things? So consider adding in your, the system will add in your done date when you tick off the to-do, but consider reviewing it and thinking, gosh, that is interesting. We always have a 15-day lag on this particular thing. We need to look again at our expectations. The next set of information is, there's ad hoc, regular and milestone to-dos. So this is a sort of a sense of it's not the status of the to-do, it's more the scope, the level. And it pertains to reporting. There are ways to get data into your regular calendar, like your Google Calendar or your Outlook calendar, by exporting them from Constance. And in fact, what you do is you export, they call it an iCal link. You can set that up in your Google Calendar, and then Constance will feed automatically any changes. So if you like looking at dates in a calendar view, and if you like being able to see all of your life's commitments and also the to-dos from Constance, then that can be really handy. And when you're setting up that export, you can choose to only include milestone to-dos, just to, give a bit of a clarity. If you are using this to the point that there are sort of 800 things that need to be done, you potentially don't want to see that on your Google Calendar. You want to see the biggies, confirm receipt of manuscript, handover from editorial to production, send to print. I mean, it gives a heartbeat, doesn't it? It's enough of a little sort of sense of whether a project is on track or not if you can see those milestones clearly. So milestone is quite good. And also if you set a to-do to be either regular or milestone, then it's copyable to other works. So when you're setting up your templates, set these to-dos as either regular or milestone, and then when you duplicate all of those to-dos for a new work, they're going to be included. If you have an ad hoc to-do, and that's something that could be only specific to this one particular work in that moment. So a good one is, you get an email from the author saying, I've changed my mind on the acknowledgement. Can you make sure that I acknowledge my mum, not my sister, or something? And that is not going to be relevant for any other work. So you don't want that to sort of pollute other projects. But it is very relevant for this one particular work. So keep that as an ad hoc, a one-off task, as it says there. And the penultimate bit on this page is what needs to be done before this to-do can be worked on. So what's going to block this sort of thing? So check number 2 on manuscript progress. That might be blocked by signing the contract, which we don't have one of at the moment. This work doesn't have signing the contract. But if this was, an easy one is send to print. What needs to be done before we can send it to print? Receive the typeset. That's a good one. You don't have to choose all of them because this will be a cascade. So if I've chosen production receive typeset, then on production receive typeset, that can also say, well, I need to have received the manuscript from editorial before I can typeset it. So, knock-on effect like that. And then hopefully, sort of do this once, maybe twice, iterate a few times, but then you've got your normal process that you can stamp out. And then you can just get on with the job of publishing rather than having to think how to publish in the moment. It's great for managing expectations. It's great for giving responsibility and authority. It's great for managing a vast number of projects all in one go. It's just generally great. So I've had greater ambitions to cover more than we've covered today, but that's okay. I think I might very, very quickly, in 5 minutes, step through the whole of the rest of today's live stream, just so that you're not left hanging. So what was the next bit? The next bit was, we've added a to-do. Well done, us. Report on to-dos. I won't go into searching and reporting because I think we can cover that in another enormous session. But I will show you one particular way of reporting on these things. This is a grid. You can get to it if you have the correct settings, the correct configuration on your account. You can get to it under project management. And if you don't and you like what you see, then ask us. This is a list of all of the works down the side there. There's some filters along the top where you can refine that down. And then the headings are actually client-specific to-do names. So not everyone will have a to-do called audible pre-orders. Not everyone will have one called final manuscript received, but the clients for this particular grid do have those, and so we can lay them out in a sort of matrix like this. So on the cat crisis, the work called the cat crisis, there is a narrator selection to do. Not brilliantly named, is it? But this is okay. And then this is the to do for it. So I click on it. Here's our familiar friend, the editing modal for that particular to do that we've been looking at from a work level. So, it's always useful to be able to see data in something that's a little bit like a spreadsheet. So if you like the look of this, and if you can imagine, these by seeing what's overdue, you're going to be able to see that, this work is overdue. This is just one way that we can lay out this sort of information. So that's a corker. Get in touch if that has appeal. There's ways to, in fact, I think I had here's the Snowbooks real account actually. And here is a report with to-dos for particular works, who they've been assigned to, and what the state of affairs is with regards to the status of the to-do as well. So that's another cut of information. We're actually working on quite a few of these at the moment, so there'll be more and more layouts like that as we go. So very quick look at reporting. Updating to-dos in bulk can also be done from reporting. So one of our displays, one of the batch actions, is to mark to-dos as done. So you can search across all of your works by different measures for the works that have got to-dos on them. And then if you're feeling bold, you can mark all of the to-dos for all of those works with this particular name. You can mark them all as done. So various batch action features like that you can enjoy. We did look actually at the before and after. Remember when we were looking at our modal, we were saying 90 days before the first pub date, we are going to phone the author to see what's going on. So that's relatively new within Constance, maybe in the last, I'm going to say month, 2 months, 3 months. It's that drop down there anyway. That used to always say before. So we were always working backwards from the pub date. And you could use those negative days to hack it if you wanted to, but it was not quite satisfactory. So before and after is now an option for you to be able to plan more kind of in a more human way, rather than having to think about negative day counts. And we've done our power move. Oh, it's been one big long power move today, has it not? Basing a to-do on contract dates. I really do feel like that's such a great way to avoid problems in the future. I mean, we all get senses, don't we? You know if a project is getting a bit hairy, sort of radio silence and then long emails explaining things. But the sooner you can get information about what's happening, then there is more scope for compassion and more scope for finding a way around the problem, rather than leaving it until the week before, hand over to production, and it all being a bit stressful. We don't want stress. Thank you very much. Great. Well, there we go. That was a very, very focused live stream, wasn't it? All about to-dos. It's definitely an area that we are working on, as I say, at the moment. There's like we were saying, we're building up from sort of primitive data, the individual to-do. But once you've got that in the system, you can present that in so many interesting and different ways. So perhaps another time we will look at reporting with a particular focus on seeing these to-dos cut in the way that makes sense, whether that's at work level, whether it's at assignee level, whether it's at what is on my plate this week level, and then things like, scrutinising done dates versus due dates and having an opinion on what we think about that and whether it's going to change things in the future. So lean on the documentation. Like I said, we searched documentation from within consonants to look up how you might want to consider naming your to-dos. Never be a stranger, always get in touch, because we've got quite a few sort of starter packs, as it were, of academic publishing to-do lists or series to-do lists. So definitely very keen to see your, the plans before they become permanent. So back to it. Lots to do, lots going on at the moment. Might show you some exciting new things next week as well, doing a little bit of extra work on all sorts of areas at the moment. So I think the What's New section might be burgeoning this time next week. But until then, have a splendid weekend. Hope that autumn, if it's autumn in your bit of the world, remains crisp and delightful like it is here. And thank you very much indeed for your attention. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.